Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 2 episode 24. It's called Our Town. So spoilers for the episode as always. This one is about chicken. Buckets of chicken. Lots of chicken. I'm being a little facetious. But it does revolve around a town where the main business is a chicken processing plant. Chaco's Chicken. And there's people dying in this town, and it's got something to do with this place. Although it doesn't turn out to have anything to do with the chicken itself. It's something they're doing outside of work. It's more of a cult thing that's going on where they're sacrificing people and, more importantly, eating them. Cannibalism as part of a ritual to keep themselves young. And we find this out throughout the course of the episode, but that's kind of where it goes and where our investigation with Mulder and Scully take us. I guess first things first, I really have to point out there's a scene in this episode after Mulder and Scully have found numerous skeletons, right? Numerous remains in a big pile at the bottom of a little river, a little creek. And they get it, all brought up, and they have all the bones laid out in this big hall, and like Scully's been trying to assemble them into various skeletons to see how many bodies there are, that kind of thing, very crime scene-esque stuff. There's a scene in this episode where Scully comes to talk to Mulder in this location, and Mulder is looking at the bones, and this is where he's coming up with these theories about cannibalism because of how the bones are. They look like they've been boiled, right? As if someone's been boiling the meat in a stew or something like that. In this entire scene, Scully is holding a bucket of chicken. And this was the most distracting thing in the world to me, because it's not like it's a jokey conversation, it's a very serious conversation about what's really going on in the plot of this episode. And the entire time, with no explanation, as far as I can remember, she's just got a bucket of chicken in her hand, and she kneels down with it, she stands up with it, she just has it in her hand. My favourite part is when she kneels down to sort of look at whatever Mulder's looking at, and you can actually see the chicken in the bucket kind of roll to the side a little bit, because it's tipping forwards. Why am I focusing on this? There's no real reason other than just it was this distracting kind of funny thing in the middle of an otherwise serious scene. Now, my assumption is that she went out and got some of the chicken that the company is selling because she wants to test it for any traces. Another part of the episode is that there's this disease, this very rare disease that's supposed to be super rare, but multiple people in the town have come up with it, and they're concerned that some of it might be in the chicken supply. So I assume the reason why she's went and got herself a bucket of chicken is to test the chicken and see if there's any traces or whatever in it. But they never say that in the scene. She never says that out loud. So you're just left watching her hold a bucket of chicken, like, she's a bit hungry. She wants some chicken for dinner. So she's going to eat this after they've looked at the dead bodies and then get back to work afterwards. That's how it feels in the scene, even though I know it's not. I can logically deduce and think about why she's holding a bucket of chicken. It's just such an absurd visual, it really stuck out to me. Anyway, that's not important, right? That's just a silly thing I wanted to observe, because whatever. How did I find this episode? That's the more important question. That's what you're here for, ultimately. It's kind of a weird one, and I think that I don't really love the plot or ultimately what it's about, right? I think when we got to the end and I'm like, oh, this was just what it was, it wasn't that exciting, right? It's the old guy who founded the town, or at the very least founded the chicken company. He spent time with a tribe somewhere that does cannibalistic rituals, and he's applying whatever he's learned, and everyone in the town is older than they actually look, and they're all eating people, outsiders, whenever they come in. But the caveat to this time is that the person they eat at the start of the episode, the cold open, this guy that's lured into the woods by a young woman for sex, he's actually got a disease. He's sick, and it's terminal. He's dying, and this thing can be passed on through the consumption of his flesh. So a lot of the cannibals actually start getting sick and dying, and that's kind of like one of the investigative leads that Mulder and Scully go through. Like, Scully thinks it's so strange that a second person has this condition in the same town because it's so rare that when a third person gets it, it's like, oh crap, how is this spreading? And they rule out the chicken quite quickly, actually, which is the thing about the bucket of chicken that doesn't make that much sense, is that they've already kind of ruled out the chicken, because if it was the chicken, then it'd be spreading all over the place, because this place ships chicken out all over the country. there'd be an epidemic going on, but there isn't. So it's like, okay, there's something else to this. But they do set up that, so there's a good bit of foreshadowing early on when the guy in the chicken plant's explaining what they do with the remains of the chicken that they can't sell in food or whatever. They kind of process it and turn it into chicken feed. And Mulder points out, wait, you got chickens eating chickens? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of nasty sounding, but it's efficient, it saves money, and it's whatever. And it's got a lot of protein or whatever in it. So that was kind of the foreshadowing that this episode is going to be about human beings that are eating other human beings, right? That was kind of like a little nudge, wink, wink early on to get you thinking about that, and certainly it got me thinking about that. As soon as they started, because there was all little hints as well. The old guy says at one point, I'm not ready to die yet, which is a hint to the fact that he's been prolonging his life. It turns out he's actually in his 90s when he only looks like he's in his 70s kind of thing later in the episode. So you've got all this going on. So I don't necessarily love the premise of the episode, but I will say I'm not going to be too negative either, because I think it's fairly well done, bizarrely. Like, I think there's a lot of smart little things in the script that set up stuff for later, like that scene talking about the chickens eating chickens. The opening scene with the guy like coughing and taking some pills, and it makes it clear that he's sick before something else happens to him. The sickness has nothing to do with what his demise is. His demise, the death at the hands of a cult, with the main one wearing this big creepy mask who kills him, has nothing to do with the fact that he's sick, but it ends up being the downfall of the townsfolk and the cult that are doing this. I like that through line to it. I actually thought that was kind of interesting, that this disease is spreading through all these people because they've all eaten a piece of him. Like, that actually, I think, was quite a fun, kind of darkly funny reveal, almost. Like, I don't know if it's meant to be have a tinge of dark comedy, but maybe my sixth sense of humor just found that a little bit funny. But I liked that part of it. I also liked some of the beats along the way. Not all of them, but I did actually really, really like when Mulder and Scully have the creek sort of dug up, and they find all the bones. I actually did love the visual of this big net just full of clearly dozens and dozens of bodies worth of human bones, just all in a big pile. It felt like the sort of thing you see in a video game, in like an RPG or something, when you're like going around a dungeon and there's been tons of people dying here. It's almost a very pulpy visual to just see this comical amount of bones all just in this big pile. So I kind of like that as well. There was a lot of little things like that, or little bits of setup and payoff that I appreciated throughout the episode, even though I don't think the episode's overall plot or where it was going appeals to me as much as other stories in the X-Files does. But as far as this type of episode goes, it kind of did as best as it could have done, to be honest. Just via some smart little writing things that set stuff up for later, a couple of nice little directing touches, and just generally Mulder and Scully being Mulder and Scully and try to figure things out. I mean, ultimately, there's not a lot about their ongoing like stories or ongoing situation with the rest of the FBI or the evil powers that be. All that really we get of that stuff here is that Scully, at the start of the episode, is adamant that they're sending them on this case because she thinks it's a wild goose chase. And as Mulder jokes, it's actually a wild chicken chase because of the company involved. Because this guy's went missing, the guy that died in the opening, and that sort of leads to why they're here investigating, because he's a missing persons, and it unravels from there. She thinks that they're being sent on this just to keep them busy, that it's just busy work, it's not actually something they expect to have been solved. And Mulder's keeping a bit more of an open mind as he's wanting on to do, because he typically believes that there's other things going on. He kind of takes some leaps here, and because he's got some old footage of someone in an insane asylum raving about the Foxfires, because there was a big fire that happened when they killed the guy at the start. To be honest, like, I can't even remember a lot of what they said about this, and I think that's because it doesn't really come up again. Because quite often when I'm watching an episode of this show, or any show for that matter, sometimes when they explain something that's weird or different, or something that I wouldn't understand from just a general knowledge sense, point of view, often the first time they bring it up, like, I'll get the gist of it, but I won't completely understand it yet until it comes up again. But usually it'll come up throughout the episode because they'll keep coming back to it because it's something that's important to the plot. Some of the stuff they bring up at the start of this one ends up not being that important, all things considered. It's kind of a part of the cult's ritual, but it's never something that is a big part of the investigation or leads to a clue or anything. All of the actual investigation goes through the chicken company and goes through like watching like how their employees work. It's actually the girl who led the guy at the start of the episode to his death that gets sick next and dies, and she kind of freaks out and like grabs her supervisor by the throat and holds a blade to his neck. And that's one of the symptoms of the disease, is that you go kind of, I don't know if you want to call it dementia or whatever, but you have these outbursts, you act out a character, and you have these headaches, and seemingly that's something that's spreading amongst the population, and they're starting to notice this, which is, it's interesting. It's also kind of interesting that the guy that goes missing, his wife, seems to know that he has affairs, seems to know that he's up to this kind of thing. So she's kind of doing this balancing act of like being mad that he was with another woman, but like it seems like she's become part of the community. Like it's because later on, the leader of this whole cult, right, the guy who owns the chicken company, he's actually mad at the others for killing the wife, because eventually they go and get the wife and eat her because she's talking to the FBI, she's raising too many questions or whatever. But the main cult guy's like, no, she was one of us now. Like, she became one of us. Like, she's one of our community. And we're not supposed to turn on each other. That's, like, what keeps us going. That's what's kept us being as healthy and as prosperous and how we do this for so long. And it all kind of falls apart towards the end, of course, when they kill the leader themselves. And they're going to kill Scully. That's actually maybe one of the critiques I would have of the episode, is that it does put Scully back in the damsel in distress role a little bit. It's something that I think there's times to justify either one of the characters being in that role for sure, but I do think there's maybe been a two occasions in season 2 where Scully has been in danger, in jeopardy, and Mulder's had to come in and save her at the last minute. And it happens again here, and sometimes it makes a lot of sense. When she'd been kidnapped and like had been through that trauma, and we did an episode right after that with a serial killer targeting her, it made a lot of sense because it was kind of provoking a lot of what she just went through, so she could fight through it and come through on the other side stronger. Here, this was just another example of a random kind of like, no, she was just in the wrong place. She was going to see the woman that was already being attacked. They knocked her out and they brought her to the big cult campfire place, and they were going to chop her head off and presumably have a meal at her expense. But Mulder just happens to see the fire from the road, which is fine. Like, that doesn't bother me too much because it's such a big fire that I buy that you can see it from the road. It's not that coincidental by any means. But at the same time, like, the only thing like saving her really is that he was in a position to see that and come and get her. Arguably, he was looking for this location because he believed she was in trouble. It's not like as satisfying perhaps as like there'd been a more like urgent, like he knows like she's in trouble and he's trying to get to her. It felt almost like happenstance. So in a weird way, it feels like Scully was closer to death in this episode than she's been in most of the times that she's been close to death, just because it felt like, oh, if Mulder just happened to go looking anywhere else, she would be dead. A lot of things just had to fall in place for her to be saved, which in a weird way makes it feel more like plot armor than it normally would do, right? Obviously, main characters do have plot armor. That's fine. It's not a problem. It's not something I critique by and large most of the time. But when they're saving, it feels as happenstance as this does, and the happenstance of it doesn't feel like it fits into any themes or anything like that. Because sometimes that might be the point. Like, maybe the point is that you could go at any point, and it's just luck that you get out of it. But this episode's not about that. This episode's not poking at those ideas. It's just the way it plays out. There's nothing more to it than that. It's pretty thin in that sense. I will say the investigation at least is interesting in terms of it, like in terms of its beats, right? In terms of the things they find out. So it's like, oh, this guy went missing. He worked for this chicken company, so we'll go see the chicken company. Oh, we get a tour of the place. We see how the chicken's processed and find out a couple of foreshadowing hints of where the things are going. And then the big incident happens with the woman there, and Mulder and Scully are there. And notably, the local sheriff like kills this woman rather than letting Mulder and Scully talk her down and take her in for questioning, which is kind of your first big hint that the sheriff's also in everything. Which he is. He's actually the one with the mask on doing the killings himself, so he's a bad guy. He's actually the only guest star in this episode that I think I recognized. I mean, I couldn't tell you what I know him from. I just know I've seen his face. Let me click on him and see what IMDb tells me. His name is Gary Grubbs. He's got a very memorable voice. I mean, he was in JFK, but I've not seen that. What have I seen him in? That's the real important thing. He's one of those guys that's just been in a lot of TV shows, I think, more than anything else. He was in Scream Queens, apparently, which I have seen. I don't think it's that I'm thinking of, though, because I'm definitely thinking of other things from the 90s. Oh, Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. I have seen that. But yeah, like I said, I enjoyed the beats of the investigation, even if there are little random elements to it to propel it forward, like the the incident with the woman going kind of crazy at the chicken plant. It just happens to happen when Mulder and Scully are there, and then likewise, the thing that leads to the river and the bones being turned up is that Mulder and Scully are actually in a car accident with someone else from the town who is suffering. Now, it's set up in a sense because the guy's suffering from this illness that's killing the others, so it's like advancing that side of things. But again, Mulder and Scully are right there and happen to be in an altercation with them as they die and careen off the road into the river, which leads to wanting to investigate the river. So there's some coincidental stuff with Mulder and Scully being in the right place at the right time, but the actual beats of the investigation are quite interesting. And I think maybe why it holds up a little bit better than other stories that I don't like as much is that it does feel well thought out in the sense of like everything kind of made sense as it was being revealed to me. Like when they started revealing what was going on and Mulder was talking about cannibalism, I'd already had that thought, and I wasn't disappointed that I'd predicted where it was going. I was satisfied because they were talking about something that I thought of because it was making sense. Like I was like, oh, this makes sense that this is why they're getting sick. It's because they're eating the people, not the chickens. Because the initial thought was that they'd maybe whoever killed the guy disposed of the body in the chicken processing stuff. But no, it's them eating the people themselves. So, and because that lined up with everything else, I kind of liked it. The cult element of it felt like they didn't dwell in that too much. Obviously, it was going on. It was how they were doing this stuff, but to get their youth extended or whatever. In fact, the young woman who was at the start of the episode and dies kind of soon into the episode, she's like in her 20s, but they find out when she dies that she's actually almost 50, and that's kind of one of the first hints of like, wait a minute, has her birth records been falsified? What's going on here? She was clearly not that age. And that kind of sets us up. I guess it gives you the idea that they've been doing this for about 20 or so years, because the old man who runs the place is also about 20 or so years older than he actually is. So you get the sense that maybe they have not aged in 20 years. Like everyone in the town just started doing this about 20 years ago, and they've not aged since then. Which does beg the question is, how do you get the kids into it? Because you want the kids to still age to their adults, presumably. You don't want kids to stop aging in their teens or younger even. That would be horrible. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some logistics to think about how the town operates in a grander scale. But they never really talk about kids in this episode. Maybe that's even an interesting point to think about. Is there any kids? What's going on there? So one of the things that happens later on in the episode, right as Scully is being knocked out, and when she goes to see the wife of the original victim, Mulder's going to the house of the guy who owns the chicken company, right? Chaco, presumably is his name. Yeah, Walter Chaco. And he's not there, probably because he's off doing culty things or whatever. But he sees a bunch of photographs from his time when he was in was it New Guinea? I want to say he was in when he met this tribe. But Mulder observes a bunch of photographs and some artifacts, and there's a locked cabinet, and the housemaid or whoever it is, comes down and says, "Oh, sorry, Mr. Chaco's not in, or he's not available right now. Can I get a message or something?" And Mulder just immediately grabs something heavy and starts breaking the lock in this cabinet because he wants to see what's inside it. And the maid is like, "Hey, what are you doing? What is this? I know you're the FBI, but come on now." And I thought there was a really weird thing here where she just kind of disappears from the scene, because Mulder opens this cabinet and there's a bunch of heads, right? It's all the skeletons they found were missing their heads, and we see heads that have been stuffed and the mouths have been sewn shut, but they're still recognizable, right? They've been preserved. It's a collection of heads in this cabinet. And Mulder reacts to it and runs up the stair with his gun out and whatever. But weirdly, you don't see the maid again, even though she was standing just a few feet behind him. It felt really strange to me not to get a reaction shot of her. either because she is shocked by this and she's not in on the whole cult thing, or because she is on it, isn't on it, and we see her maybe like get worried and run away or something. The scene just acts like she doesn't exist, which is really weird. But only from that point on. I thought that was strange. It's just a strange little thing. It reeks of them editing it down for time or something like that. Like maybe they were a few seconds long and they had to trim it a few seconds, so they just sped it up by kind of ignoring the fact that she was there. But it felt really weird. So wanted to mention that. But yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. Like I kind of appreciate that when we get to the fire scene where they're going to kill Scully, it does feel like they're all just evil. Like, and one of the things that the leader Checo is mad about is that he's saying, hey, you've all become monsters. Like, you've become too greedy. Like, yeah, we kill outsiders occasionally, but we have each other's backs, and that's how we keep going. If we start turning on each other, that's, we're no different from the animals. And everyone's just sort of licking their lips because they've just been eating the other woman, and they're like wanting more, and they're going to kill him. And I one touch that I really liked here actually is that when Mulder comes in and shoots the executioner, who turns out to be the sheriff, he shoots him, everyone scatters and starts running away because the FBI's here, and Mulder comes and gets Scully. Is that the main guy who's kind of running the show now, and the guy who's kind of like done the uprising in the cult against Checo, was the manager from the chicken plant, right? He was the one that was showing Mulder and Scully around earlier, and we saw a few scenes with him. So he was the one that was kind of acting as the new leader in the group. Is that he tries to shoot Mulder, but because everyone's running about and scattering really, really quickly, he gets knocked down and actually trampled on, seemingly to death. And I thought that was just an interesting little point to tie up with what the old man had just said before he died, was that, hey, if we all turn on each other, like, this won't work anymore. And I think it's interesting that he says that, oh, you've all been overtaken by fear rather than whatever they were doing before. But the point being is that fear and this, like, what they've become, because they just immediately dissolve into panic, it actually gets the new leader killed because they're just unorganized or uncoordinated, and they're just fleeing like wild animals, and it gets him killed. It's kind of like a karmic retribution almost, or a comeuppance for the new leader who was going a bit more vicious. Not that the original leader was a great guy, he was still killing innocent people to fuel this cult of like everlasting youth, but he seemed to have like more of a sensible head on him versus the other one. No pun intended, because his head got chopped off. Just to point that out. So yeah, it's a whole thing. It's implied at the end that someone's body gets like hidden in the chicken supply or whatever. But the company's shut down, the plant's shut down, as Scully kind of narrates out the episode, and that's pretty much the whole thing. Yeah, it's not bad. I think it's like it's a premise that I don't like that much, that it's done fairly well. So in the end, I think I enjoyed the episode a lot more than I didn't. I enjoyed certain scenes quite a bit. There's a couple of weird little moments where, the maid disappears from the scene, seemingly, or Scully's holding a bucket of chicken for the entire scene, which means I can't take anything they're saying seriously because it's just such a weird visual. And it's got red and white stripes, so while it's not technically KFC, it looks like a KFC chicken bucket. Like, that's what it looks like she's holding throughout the entire scene. I don't watch Game of Thrones because I don't like Game of Thrones, but I remember there been a lot of poking fun at it because someone left a Starbucks cup like on the set one day, and you can see it in one of the scenes. I don't know if they ever like digitally took that out or whatever, but it was a thing. I remember seeing screenshots of this Starbucks cup just sitting on the table during the scene, and no one noticed it was there, at least until it was too late. And all I can imagine is this like an even more evolved version of that, where where Gillian Anderson was enjoying some chicken and refused to give up her bucket. How some actors can be difficult and they don't want to, like, Marlon Brando would make all sorts of demands and whatnot. This was Gillian Anderson's demand for this episode. I'm going to quit the show if I can't keep my bucket of chicken during this scene. And I know roughly why it's there. I can deduce the exact reason why it's there. It's just a weird visual, and I think it's really funny. So, not that I'm dragging the episode down for that, because it's it's, you know, that's whatever. But there's other little problems, like I said, like editing, having characters mysteriously disappear, a little bit of pacing here or there or whatever. But yeah, not bad by any means. You know, and I was thinking that maybe not just on X-Files, but maybe something I'd start doing. And I realized, you know, I had seen the episode for like 2 episodes and then forgot about it. But I was thinking maybe I should just start rating episodes at the end. I think the reason why I didn't want to do that for a long time, even though I always do it with movies, is because it's a little bit weirder with TV. Because are you saying that, you know, if I'm rating out of 10, which is what I would be doing, is you know, is a 7 in one show the same as a 7 in another show, right? If I give an X-Files episode, you know, an 8 out of 10, is that equal to an 8 out of 10 in a Breaking Bad? Is it? No, it probably isn't. But at the same time, like, it's almost like every show has its own curve in a weird way. But I also wouldn't say that automatically means that the best episode of a show is a 10. Because there's some TV shows that I would say just never have a 10. Doesn't make them bad shows, but it just means that, you know, it's not like a scale where, oh, the best show of a or the best episode of a show is automatically the 10 on the scale, and the worst episode's a 1, and then you have to decide like where all the other episodes lie in between those two. It's not like that. That would be weird and hard to actually sort of get your head around, to be honest, especially when you've not watched them all yet. But anyway, I was thinking I would do it. Just to give like a definitive end point at the end of the review, say, hey, this is the score. This is where I'm leaving it off. And I think this episode is a solid 6 out of 10. Is what I'm building up to. Maybe a 6.5. I do 0.5s in the movies as well. Maybe I'd be convinced to go to a 6.5 on this one. I don't think I'd quite get it to good, right? Because that's typically what I think of as a 7 is good, 8's great, 9's amazing, 10 is masterpiece, right? If I'm explaining what the numbers on my scale typically mean, 5 obviously is middling, mediocre, whatever, and you know, I'll cover the low numbers when we hit them at some point, because I'm sure we will. But I think this is a decent episode, which is where I'd say a 6 kind of is, and maybe even Virgin up a little bit in terms of just a couple of quality moments that elevate it. So I'll say 6.5 on this one, and I'll try and remember to rate these going forward. I do it for all the movies, so it should be easier to remember to do that. But by all means, hold me accountable in the comments if I forget. And don't ask me to go back and rate all the old ones, because it's hard to do that after a while. It's easy to do after you've watched it and everything's fresh in your head. It's hard to do it in hindsight for most of them. But I don't know, maybe I'll do like a catch-up video or something where I just sit and rate all the previous episodes out of 10 to the best of my memory. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this week's X-Files. It is a decent episode. Not the best by any means, but not the worst either. So we have one more left in season 2. We have the finale to watch, so I'm curious to see where we go with that. And I do read the next time on this, don't I? So the next one is called Anazi. Anazazi. I hope I hear them say it in the episode, because I'm really struggling. Anasazi, whatever, right? You can read it for yourself. Mulder receives an encrypted computer tape containing the Defense Department's top secret file on extraterrestrial life and becomes a target. Scully takes him to a Navajo family that unearthed a buried secret to decipher the files. So yeah, we're doing a big plot, a big, you know, overarching story episode, unsurprisingly for the season finale. Mulder's getting closer to some of that sweet truth that he so desperately seeks. So, will he get it? No, definitely not. It's only the end of season 2. I don't expect more than a fragment of truth, but we'll see. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership if that's more your thing. But Patreon will get you access to the bonus stuff for the movie channel as well. And if you haven't checked out MailFuzz Movies, go and check out that. There's a sci-fi movie podcast that I do with David over there. It's over 200 episodes talking about science fiction movies. If that sounds like a good time, then go and have a look-see. But that is me. Thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?